Hello, foodie friends. You will have to forgive my voice on this episode. It might crack a little bit. Yesterday, Mitch started not feeling well. We're pretty sure he's got a head cold, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I do not get it. But of course, living in the same house, you kind of can't escape. So let's just keep our fingers crossed that I escape the worst of it, even though I'm kind of starting to get that little bit of a crackle feeling in my throat and a little bit of a stuffy nose. But we're gonna stay as optimistic as we can. Now, for this episode, I'm really excited because we're going to be going through some of my top picks for vintage cookbooks. These are the cookbooks that you're going to want to give as a gift to someone who absolutely loves older style cooking, vintage food, and all kinds of vintage recipes. And they're not afraid to maybe have to do a little bit of work and translating some of the recipes that may not make total sense to us as a modern cook, or, use different tools, different techniques of cooking, and, really want to delve into what food tasted like decades ago. So I have some runners up and I'm really excited about them. And I do have a vegetarian pick this time, although I do not have a vegan one, but I do have a really fun vegetarian one. So my first runners up, now this is a throwback on this channel. The Lilly Wallace New American Cookbook. You can see it's nice and thick. It's got tons and tons of vintage recipes for you to choose from and go through. I picked this up in a yard sale and I'm so glad I did. We made on this channel, well, it was one of the first episodes we ever did. So if you do go back and watch it, you're gonna see some difference in editing and not as good camera work, but I hope that I've learned since then. So we rated this cookbook really high. I've enjoyed perusing it on my own time and cooking out of it, so I think it'd be a really great pick. Now, my other favorite turned out to be the new Delineator recipes. Now, this cookbook had several different editions printed throughout the 20s and 30s, and I think even into the 40s. So whichever version you pick, I'm sure is gonna be really good. Kind of like this cookbook here, the Betty Crocker's Big Red Cookbook. It's been printed for decades, just like this. Not a whole lot of changes between each one, but most of them have been tried and true recipes that people really loved. So we did this on the channel and we absolutely loved what we cooked out of it. Also, the version I had all these wonderful newspaper clippings and handwritten recipes in it. I bought this from the library book sale, and I was so glad that they kept all this person's original little clippings in it, because the clippings turned out to be half the fun. So if you can find a new Delineator cookbook that's stuffed full of really cool newspaper clippings, go ahead and gift the whole thing, because your gift recipient will absolutely love it. Now for our vintage vegetarian cookbook. We absolutely love the New Farm Vegetarian Cookbook. Now, this was during our commune series that we did, looking at all kinds of different communes that put out cookbooks during the 60s and 70s. And this commune still happens to be going, based in Tennessee. You can go visit them. Actually, I think they might be closed now to visitors just because of things that are going on, but they will reopen as soon as cases start to go down in Tennessee. And you can go visit them and you can eat there. So I think that's really cool that not only are they still going strong as a commune, but after decades and decades, their cookbook is still really fun and has lots of tasty recipes in it. I'm still making the cheese out of this cookbook. Or I should say cheese, because it's actually made out of nutritional yeast. It's so good and really wonderful on the soy burgers, and we still make it and eat it. So I would highly recommend this for the vegetarian friend in your life that loves vintage food. Now, I went a little different for some of our runners-up because I have two cookbooks that are really fun, and they're not technically vintage in that they were not printed in a vintage decade, but they kind of fit the theme, because if you have a friend who loves vintage television, especially from the 60s and 70s, oh my gosh, this cookbook, Cooking with Columbo, which we did 2 dishes out of it. And I will be linking these episodes in the description box below so you can watch them if you would like. The food was so good out of this book. We have made several suppers out of this cookbook and we've loved all of them. Each recipe is from a vintage movie star or television character actor that was featured in one of the episodes of Columbo, and it is absolutely awesome. She has lots of information about the Columbo TV show itself. She's got some information about the guest stars and the recipes that they submitted, and it is just wonderful. If you want to make a dish cooked by William Shatner, it's in here. If you want the dish cooked by Dick Van Dyke, it's in here. It's awesome. So there you have, if you have a friend that loves vintage television, they're going to love this cookbook. Now, this next one, I could not resist it. I guess maybe you could sort of call it a vintage cookbook because it was published in 1997. And I do think they're actually calling that vintage now. But the recipes inside are actually from 1912, and all was served on the Titanic. Now, as much as I love the Titanic, how could I leave this cookbook out of this episode? It is so good, and we have featured this cookbook heavily on this channel. I did an entire Titanic series for the month of April in which we did nothing but recipes out of this cookbook, and they were spectacular every time. I've done Titanic suppers for friends and family throughout the years and had entire courses and invited them over to my house, and we've had lots of fun, pretending to be in 1912. And every single thing I've cooked out of this cookbook has been out of this world tasty. Now, you may be thinking, oh, but that could be really expensive, right? I mean, Titanic, they had a lot of really expensive food. Yes, there is a lobster dish in here, but what's so cool about this cookbook is they don't just tell you what the first class ate, they tell you what second and third class ate. And ironically, it was the second and third class dinners that we ended up enjoying the most and thought were the most tasty and had the most bang for your buck, and actually didn't hardly cost anything at all to make. So we think that if you've got a history buff as a friend that loves vintage food, they're absolutely going to fall in love with this cookbook. Now, as far as our top winner, This one might surprise you a little bit. But it was one that, just like last week, my husband thought, you know what? I think that should be our winner because it was just so good. And that is Rufus Estes' Good Things to Eat. Now, you notice that it's not very thick, but it is absolutely crammed full of recipes. And the reason why we love this cookbook so much is not only can you really feel how much he loved food by the way he writes about it and writes his recipes, but the recipes themselves actually turn out to be, for a vintage cookbook, really easy to understand and easy to make, which is really a testament to how well he wrote the recipes. Because a lot of vintage cooks would assume that you knew certain things already, and so they wouldn't bother to put things down, which for a modern cook can kind of be confusing. But he doesn't do that as much as the other vintage cookbooks that we've had on this channel. You can actually make, with confidence, a lot of the dishes in here. We also love how varied the dishes are. So he goes from pineapple marshmallows and candying your own pansies and violets to just, chicken cacciatore, which is really cool because you're seeing, a whole wide variety of the foods that would have been prepared in the 1800s and early 1900s. So this is what we're going to cook out of today. I picked kind of an unusual recipe. It doesn't have unusual ingredients, but the preparation's a little unusual, and it really reminds me of things that I've seen some of the Japanese and South Korean YouTubers that I like to watch make when they make like stuffed rice balls. So that's what we're going to do. I need to get my muffin tin out and get ready. So let's go ahead. We're gonna get started.
Now this recipe is pretty simple, so all you really need to do for now is boil your 2 chicken breasts. Of course, if you've got a bigger family, you can do more. But with me and Mitch, we might not even use this much, so I might reserve some of it for another recipe. Same thing with the rice. I just used a plain white rice. I think white rice kind of sticks together a little bit better, so it'll probably be better for this recipe, but if you want to substitute brown rice, I'd say that would probably be just as tasty. And I've got my rice boiling in here, and you will notice I used this entire bag, which we will probably not use just for 2 people the whole thing. So I will use what I need for the recipe and then freeze the rest and use it for something else. I've got the chicken all minced, and look at the 2 little babies I've got here waiting for me to drop something. I may go ahead and, oh, yup, she's doing tricks to try to get a little piece. Now with this, according to the recipe, all we need to do is season with salt and pepper and a little bit of chicken broth or gravy. And I've decided, since I boiled the chicken and I already have a little bit of the broth right here, I'm just going to moisten it with this. Now, you'll notice that this says to cook in a moderate oven, and I've actually found in some other vintage cookbooks that had some translations in it that typically meant about 350 degrees. So that's what I've got my oven set to. So we are ready to go ahead and put this together and see how this is going to look. sauce is almost done. The chicken and rice is almost ready to come out of the oven. But I thought it'd be really nice to serve this with a cute little salad. So we're gonna go and head out to the greenhouse and pick some lettuce. Ooh, our onions are doing so good. And this lettuce is about at the end of its life, I think. So I've been really picking at it and trying to use it up so I can sow some more. So let's go ahead and get us a big salad. I think that should be enough, but I wanted to show you. Look where I've picked from these before. You can see that the plants are already shooting up brand new little baby leaves to replace the ones that I harvested earlier. That is so cool.
Okay, we're ready. We do have Mitch with us, who probably won't be saying a whole lot just because he doesn't feel good.
Not great. No.
But I feel like this is probably the perfect food for someone that doesn't feel good. It's very just comfort food, really. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and dig in. Okay. I'm actually really surprised. Like, it actually does go very well together.
Yeah. It's not like a super complex flavor. Which, I mean, I'm not sure if I could taste it even if it was or not.
I know.
But it is, like you said, like a kind of a comfort food. It's kind of something that, like, you know, if I'm not feeling very good, it's something I want to just, you know, it's kind of just good filling.
Just kind of like nourishing.
Yeah.
For especially like on a cold day when you have a cold.
It's almost like a chicken noodle soup in a like
just on a plate.
On a plate.
Yeah, it really is. It's one of those where you just kind of like keep eating it. Even though, like, you know what I mean? Like, you just kind of want to just kind of keep tucking in and eating on it. Now, I think I kind of expected them to hold their shape a little better. I think that was my fault. I think next time I make these, like, I will really, really press that rice down into the muffin tin. However, it doesn't affect the taste of it.
No.
Yeah,
it's
so
really good.
It's really good either way. I think this was really good for kids too.
Yeah.
You know, like if you wanted
if you got
to
a picky eater that doesn't like a lot of different flavors, this is something that's pretty simple that they would really, I can't imagine anybody not liking.
Especially if you want to introduce them to like vintage foods and vintage cookbooks and stuff, like this would be a really good way of doing it. Serve it with a really nice green salad and you've got kind of just a complete comfort meal.
Yeah.
So this has been really good. Really, like I said, have enjoyed this particular cookbook. It's been a lot of fun to look through. We've really enjoyed the foods we've made out of it. So I really hope if you've got a vintage chef in your life that this is something you may consider as a gift. And don't forget our runners up. You have plenty to choose from out there in the vintage world, and this is just some of the best ones that we have done on this channel in particular. So we really hope that we gave you some really fun ideas to think about to stick in someone's stocking or underneath their Christmas tree as a really cool gift. Now we're gonna go ahead and wrap up so we can keep eating and probably put Mitch back to bed.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm kind of starting to sniffle myself, so I think we know who to blame for that one. So thank you for watching this episode. We're going to have some fun things in store for Christmas for our December videos. Some of them I've picked out already, and some of them I don't know what we're doing yet. So that's going to be kind of a fun surprise for all of us. And don't forget, December, we're going to be having giveaways. So I'm really excited for that. Can't wait to see who's going to win some of the cookbooks I have picked out for you guys. So stay around for that one. We'll see you then. Bye.
And if you like historical cooking and unusual cookbooks, here's 2 more videos you might enjoy. And make sure to like and subscribe for more foodie adventures.